So the other day, I came across this news about an open source company called Charm raising $6 million. That surprised me for a few reasons, as we'll get into them in a minute. But luckily, I had a chance to interview someone who was a key part of the whole process. Her name is Jay Z, to sort of demystify the whole process. When I went through the recording of it, I found that there's a lot of valuable information, and practical tips that a lot of you should be able to learn from, whether or not you're an entrepreneur. So that's why I decided to share the recording with you today. I hope you will enjoy. So, Jay Z, do you mind introducing yourself for everyone?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Jay Z. I am the COO at Charm and very excited to be here today.
Cool. Right. So let's step back a bit and let me ask you,
Sure.
what is Charm?
Charm is an open source company. We make tools that are modernizing the command line and making the command line a platform. It's the easiest way that I can say it. For those who are interested in checking out, we're all over GitHub. Some most popular libraries include Bubble Tea, which is an Elm architecture inspired TUI framework, to Gum, which is an easy way to customize shell scripts, your bash scripts, and VHS, which allows you to demo your tooling in the command line.
Cool. My understanding is that you raised $6 million recently for a seed round for
Yes.
Charm.
Yes.
And that seems unusually large for a seed round. How did you do that?
So, which part, if we were to dive more in details, is it the number part? You want to know about the journey, the process?
I
What
think
is most intriguing?
just a quick summary of the whole journey, from I think where a charm started, where you joined, and then how you got here would be great.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, the full story. Well, let's see. Charm started at the end of 2019 by my wonderful co founders, Toby and Christian. Now, at the time, the three of us were at a long table that is not unlike this one in New York City, side by side, filling out paperwork. I myself have a background of serial entrepreneur, and that's where I met Toby and Christian. We were all at a Series A company. I was heading finance and operations. Toby was the senior engineer, and Christian was the creative director. Now, after that company went through Series A, I was invited by the partners to be a VC. So I ended up leading a bunch of deals. And Toby and Christian were at that table filling out incorporation docs for Charm. And where I come into play is I was there that day filling out the paperwork with them, including, kind of what compliance boxes to check. I've done this for better, for worse, a lot of times. And I remember walking away that day just thinking, wow, anyone would be so lucky to work with such talented individuals. I ended up taking part in investing in the company in their earliest rounds at my VC firm. And fast forward year and a half later, which was almost now 2 years ago, Toby had reached out and said, hey, we just crossed an open source milestone. I think at the time they just crossed 12,000 GitHub stars, which, as you know, YK is, and those listening might know, is kind of a marquee milestone. And they said, we've raised some funding. The team right now is super technical. We would love for you to join and run the business. And so I kind of thought about the pros and cons. And, I started my first company when I was 17. I'd always kind of had that entrepreneur bug. I saw the other side of VCs, how to lead deals, what the fundraising market looks like, sitting on the other side looks like, being a board member looks like, how to negotiate terms. And I took that leap of faith. And I was like, you know what? If we're going to do this, I want to do this with the right team, build something interesting. And certainly it's my first dev tooling company. I've always been in the consumer software business, whether it's my own or those I've helped run. And that was when I joined, we had just crossed, I think we shortly had celebrated 25K 3 months after I joined. And very recently, as YK, we just crossed 90,000 GitHub stars across our libraries, which is something just to be very, very grateful for the community support. So fast forward, that's kind of a little bit of background story. Fast forward, they had raised a seed round. I joined a smaller seed round, about 3 million. And this past year and a half, I will be completely transparent to those listening. For those who are not in kind of the Silicon Valley or the startup tech scene, it's been a tough funding market. And I think that kind of alludes to YK's question about like, wow, 6 million is a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for where we are right now because of how tough the fundraising market is. Public equities have tanked, and that kind of IPO markets haven't opened. Some people might have heard of, but in the private market, especially early stage, unfortunately, startups are falling left and right. And we're a startup funded company. We, at the beginning of the year, end of last year, we started to talk to VCs. And quite frankly, YK, you and I have talked about this. There were a lot of no's. I want to be completely transparent. It wasn't, everyone sees a TechCrunch article and you're like, wow, big figure, big name. And spoiler, it was Google's early stage AI fund that funded us, called Gradient Ventures. And so people see the headliner and they see the title and they're like, oh my gosh, like so easy for them. Like could they do it? And we got a lot of no's. And so my first tip for those who are trying to look for venture funding, for those who want to be entrepreneurs and go through this route, which is a chosen path, it's not easy, very market conditional, is you have to find the right investor. And sometimes for some people, that's going through 2 investors, and maybe the second one, you found the right one. It's cliche, but it's like dating, right? Sometimes you get 49 no's. Sometimes you get 120 no's, right? But also, who cares how many no's until you get to the yes? And hopefully you get to the yes before you run out of money, because that is a ticking time. So the next question is, how did it come to be? So I wrote a little thread when we announced it, but essentially we had gone to market. Toby, especially one of our co-founders, he led the charge in a lot of these conversations, and with both existing investors as well as new investors. And at the time, the market wasn't looking so friendly. And in the summertime, I want to say, last summer, I brought on, when I joined the company, a host of open source entrepreneurs. So a network of my personal friends and open source enthusiasts. I thought that was really important to add to our network, including some that were announced. So including, Supabase's CEO, their head of DevRel, to execs at PlanetScale, to various kind of dev tool heavy. We had Truffle Security to Fleet Smith founders, all very entrepreneurs who get it. And I wanted their advice. Honeycomb CEO, dev tooling space. And we ended up having one of those angels, Walter, lead me a warm introduction to the general partner at Gradient. And that's what happens. When we talked, him and I had that first call, he got it. He wasn't like a lot of the VCs who were pressing us to have 2 million ARR yesterday. He understood, oh, wow, you guys have crazy distribution and adoption, which is rare. And people who know. I mean, YK, but not everyone knows. And we see that love, we know the value, but a lot of VCs, you're just another company that's not at 2 million ARR. So fortunately, they got it. And shortly after, I introduced Darian to my co-founders, Toby and Christian. And, we started going through the round really fast. Within 2 weeks, we had met, the 3 of us, with the entire Gradient partnership team. And then the week after that, I negotiated the terms with Darian, him and I, and we make sure everything was fair to the team, the larger team, as well as to Gradient. And we signed the term sheet, but I think it was like maybe 2.5 weeks. And then within 6 weeks, everything was wired, sealed, and done. And that was, wow, I want to say, a month ago. So the second kind of huge learning for those listening and in this space is, if someone wants to do it, they can do it fast. So if they're dragging you on for 6 months, like with dating, as we said, it's usually not a friendly sign. I just went on a whole spiel, YK, so feel free to tell me if there are things I'm missing or things that should be cleared up.
Right. So one immediate question I have.
Yeah, please.
Is you did a seed round of 2 million and then you did another seed round of 6 million. How does that work?
Yeah. So in terms of equity financing, so 3 million was the original round that happened, I want to say end of 2019 when it was formed. And this round technically is called a seed plus. So depending on it, it's very venture capital, but it's usually between a seed and an A. And some people would call it a bridge. It's called a bridge round, or you can call it a plus round. But essentially it's a seed round. It's not a series A. Because 6 is for us still too small for a series A, but still in today's market, a really fair and square seed round. And fortunately for us, I know a lot of people are doing safes and notes as debt. This one is kind of fair and square equity round.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's amazing to hear. And I'm trying to think of something, that would be useful to hopefully the maximum number of people listening.
Yeah.
And one thing that stands out to me is the personal connection aspect of it.
Yeah.
You mentioned these open source executives that you sort of knew in your network, and they introduced you to even more people.
Yeah.
So it sounds like building this personal network, it has been a huge part of your success so far.
Absolutely. And it's really important, especially for those listening. Some I know maybe are not as extroverted or don't really, they think of networking. I've heard this a lot. Everyone thinks of networking as this like used car salesman, old model, but reality is it's kind of like making friends online too, on Twitter or on Discord. You're just making a friend. Like you asked me, why do you come to GitHub? Because I have friends I have met on Twitter, met on Discord, met on whatever that I've never like touched, hugged, high-fived, all the things. And for example, whenever I go to a dev meetup in SF and there's, say 100 people at dev meetup, I say, oh, I'm from Charm. And I'm usually, I don't go to dev meetups every day. I don't know who knows us, who doesn't know us. I just assume no one knows us, or at least me. And then when people are like, oh my gosh, Charm, I love Charm. I use VHS. I use Bubble Tea. You're from Charm, the CLI company. And I'm so touched. I'm like, we're friends. We're already friends, And so that kind of, I think that is something very special to open source that not every type of company gets to enjoy. This network of very creative, passionate, opinionated developers that are all striving to create something for the better ecosystem, with maybe some with an agenda, but largely just trying to share wealth of knowledge, which is something I really enjoy working with YK and your platform, your friends. It's just sharing, how do you grow better? How do you start coding? Like trying to remove those barriers. And that's also what kind of draws me into open source, even though I'm not, your traditionally trained dev.
Right. So it sounds like the people you talk to online, like the online network you have, you value that.
Yeah. Value it tons. And it's funny because I've also gotten the frequent question. They're like, oh, you're not a dev. You're like, how do you kind of connect with these folk? And when I first joined, I'll admit that was a question I had. I was like, I'm not going to be telling them about the best sources to find, the hottest tooling. And now I know a little bit about, dabbling with my configuration Z shell files. But like, you're thinking about what do they need? So I think, YK, you've been so good about helping people introduce them to easy ways to connect or build tooling or getting into AI. And for me, I'm kind of the honorary parentheses biz person for devs. So when my team, who is very technical, everyone is technical and I'm the only one who runs business stuff, when they need questions on marketing, or maybe some of them are doing, have partnerships with a HashiCorp an enterprise and they're working on their SLA. They're like, what are market terms? Or for example, some of them are curious about freelancing or investor stuff. How does that work? Like you had asked, and I'm sure a common question, what is a pre-seed or a safe round or these things that, to be honest, devs have no need to know really, but maybe they're just naturally inclined or they think about starting their company one day. They just want to be in. And I'm like, hey, I'm that person that can like, that's like all I do, bread and butter. Like, let me share some knowledge in a way that is applicable to you. And let me help you. Like your support contract, this is what I've seen as market. I want to get you the best rate and I want to offer you to you because you're part of the community. And at no charge whatsoever. We're just all here to help each other.
Right. So it sounds like you help devs with business stuff and devs help you with technical stuff.
Kind of, yeah. And I'm definitely not shy, as my team knows, to ask all the stupid questions. I'm very much about it. And I very much ask, hey, what are top, tools and tips you wish you knew when you launch your first open source project? Or someone asked me for the hottest tools that you're seeing in the market, right? Or the newest editor or the newest kind of AI function that they want to try around with. I'm not in these things day in, day out. And so, but not only do they help me with stuff, it's also like there are users, right? So I want feedback. I want them to try our stuff and just tell me what they like, what they don't like. And I think through kind of building that rapport and trust, they can be more trustful of me, of the team, of the Charm brand, that, Jay-Z's not going to snake you, right? Because we've talked to her, like she can take tough feedback. And I want them to be passionate. If there's some stuff that we can improve, they want features on, that's something that is that's something that I want to hear and improve on.
Cool. So you talked about negotiation. I think that's a huge topic. And it's good to hear that this is a bridge round. It does give a little bit more context on this.
Yes.
It's not a pure seed round, so that's good to know. But still, 6 million for a bridge round, between seed and Series A, that's
double it.
Huge.
It's double the size.
Yeah.
It's the double of the size of our original seed. Yeah.
Right. So, and you mentioned negotiation. So how did you negotiate?
Ooh, we might need another hour for this session. Let me think. So negotiation is something of an art, just like coding is an art. And I love it. It is so fun. I know how many people just hate it because oftentimes it can feel confrontational. But I think one of the top things to consider is to think of it as a mindset. So when you think about negotiation, it's like, I like to think of it as a conversation, and it's a little bit of a game where I think where people get stuck is they think of it as zero sum. And that's fair because that's been maybe their life experience, right? So maybe and I'm just drawing this out of air, but when you were little, it's like if you had a sibling and resources were slim, then, hey, you got to give that toy to the younger brother. Or like, okay, I only have only one of you, the winner gets the ice cream. So it's a zero sum, only the winner gets it. And as you get older, more of those circumstances come up. Like only the gold winner gets their credit in the limelight, and the silver and the bronze no one hears about ever again. And it feels like you're pinpoint against each other. But in business or negotiation in anything, right? It should be kind of a friendly exchange. It is transactional, don't get me wrong, we're very much in capitalism here. But it should be like, if you do it right, in hopefully an environment that's suitable, and again, the right investor, it should be fair. And so there are many items, say there are 10 items on a term sheet or on a contract or on an SLA. I'm trying to make this applicable to everyone or like a job offer, right? If there's 10 items you can negotiate, then you kind of try to prioritize what matters most. So maybe, we care about the amount of dollar invested in. So for us, that was 6. And we care about valuation the most, right? We don't care about whether they take a board seat or not. Maybe we don't care about if they take 2 board seats. Or maybe they care about that the founders are 20% vested or 50% vested, or founders have 50% of the company, or I'm just throwing blank numbers, or they have 25% of the company. Like there are certain things that investors care about from their point of view. And there are certain things we care about from the company's point of view. So how do you align things that make sense for each of you in terms of that priority matching? And then how can you work around a compromise around things that are somewhat important to each of you? And so for those listening, if you think about day to day, you think about, I think most common people think about negotiating in their job offers, right? And I've kind of advised various friends in the network or those have you, even devs, right, for negotiating advice. And I think sometimes the golden nugget is like, how much can I charge? But really, like, there are other polls that you can do. Hey, can I be remote? I mean, remote, that flexibility is a big pull. That's a non-financial benefit. Another might be title, right? That's a big financial, like principal versus staff versus junior engineer. Those mean different things to different people. Can you pull that? Now, vacation days, you have 10 set vacation days or you have unlimited. I mean, unlimited vacation, everyone in the room just like sparked up. Another might be going to GitHub Universe, 1 or 2 annual conferences where you get to network, where you get to meet YK in person. And those are all meaningful. Like, what are skills that matter to you in the longer term? If a company, say it's a startup, they're limited in resources. They're like, hey, we can't do this, but we want to help you succeed. We will introduce you to the CEOs of Supabase or whoever to help you grow. And that's meaningful. That's always something to think about. Hopefully that's actionable.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I'm now curious.
Yes.
Because you mentioned the CEO of Superbase twice.
Yes.
Couple.
Yes, he's a friend.
He's a friend.
Yes.
What's your relation? Like, how, can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So I mentioned couple partly because when I was joining Charm, they were kind of the most recent, very successful open source venture-backed company. There are more, more advanced, quote unquote. So there's, Guillermo at Vercel, from Next.js to now a huge pre-IPO. And then there was also, obviously, HashiCorp, right? Hashi being the IPO example of open source. Now, Supabase being like where we are right ahead of us, they just raised, I think, a big Series B. We kind of look at them as the big brother that we want to aspire to. And Couple, I was introduced through the open source community, and we've since hung out, a few times and gotten to know each other. He knows of Charm, and I get to ask him for advice on a little bit in the hey big brother, like, what did you guys do when you guys were trying to go to market initially? You guys had huge open source traction, and whenever he sees my investor updates, he will send me like I remember one investor update, I was like, we just had our 3rd project go viral, and we've now kind of honed this playbook for open source projects. And I remember he like texted me, he was like, can you share the playbook? but similarly too, when we announced our 6 million round, he was one of the first to text me and say, hey, you guys he sent me a screenshot. You guys made the front page of Hacker News. And I didn't even know this because he got the news earlier. And so it's a great relationship. I think it's very important to have friends we've also done kind of highlights together, streaming events together. And, when they do a Supabase event or when we do a Charm event, we all always like try to invite each other because we share a community. And I think that's very special as you cultivate these relationships. A lot of them, in person, I find them very efficient. So come to GitHub, hone these relationships with the GitHub giants, but also Microsoft, also AWS, also various individual champions, enthusiasts, maintainers. That's huge for anyone. I've also had this conversation with individual devs who's told me like IRL has changed your life. Once they kind of got out of that, I'm only comfortable in my home coding mode, it does. Step out of it, it changes your life. And I encourage it for everyone.
Did you just say get out of your house to change your life?
Well, for those who are used to kind of just being in their own environment in their home, which I get, comfy, cozy. I mean, we all love being in PJs. But like I have heard from specific dev friends of mine who've now done very well as individuals. They said the top tip that changed my life was going out there, meeting people IRL. That's a quote from someone who's, quite prolific. So I think that's a hacker tip that I can share with many.
So if there's one takeaway from this, get out of your house.
Hey, sweats are all the rage right now. You can even go out in your sweats. So come for the stickers and stay for the friends.
Nice. So, it's amazing to hear your journey, and it's interesting to think about Superbase example because, to me, it's a clearer example of a business that's based on open source project or a couple of open source projects, because they're able to host their own open source services and charge for that.
Yeah,
and that's a very clear monetization strategy. But for you, you're pre-revenue,
correct,
but you still were able to convince investors that this is a valuable business. How did you do that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's about finding the right investor who believes in your long-term vision, right? So we do have a go-to-market commercialization strategy, and we do have, a product that we're working on, stay tuned. And so it's about showing the right investor that this is something that will work in the long term. And right now we're investing our time and resources on growing the proper foundation, community, and network that will lead to conversion for the right audience, right? Because YK, you know this so well. With open source, a lot of companies choose not to do that. And I know this because they've told me, because it's a very passionate, creative, also opinionated user base. And, sometimes they don't like certain ways things are handled. And we don't want, because of we value our users so much, we don't want to flip on certain things too soon. We want to make sure the product is right to our users who are willing to see the value and eventually pay for it. And we will always have open source products. That's going to be always a core component of the company. But for some users, a subset of that, probably organizations more, they will have additional features that make sense for them to pay for.
Like, I'm thinking enterprise features.
Correct. So enterprise features to deal with maybe compliance, security, team-related stuff, ACL. Nothing that you haven't seen before. Nothing that Superbase is not doing, GitHub is not doing. Like, you're seeing the enterprise model. They are the giant, right? They're free everything, open source everything, more donuts, more chips, all the things. And then enterprise is like, 6-figure contracts at a time.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to sort of, play the devil's advocate and, push it back on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, again, with Superbase, it's a hosted service. You pay for it, but it's very clear. GitHub, same thing. It's a hosted service. You pay for it. But Charm is not a hosted service. It's a local, app. So I'm wondering, how do you even approach that?
So I can't reveal too much yet. When we have the product, hopefully we can talk again and I can share a lot more. But we are certainly exploring certain models, including kind of the right user set and starting with a lot of our early adopters, what that looks like. We'll be trying out them probably with either free or very, very low price to start out with, and hope to include some of those listening in that early alpha beta testing phase. And we'll be exploring. That's kind of all I can share for now. But yeah, we do look at, your GitHubs and Superbase for a reference, and stay tuned is all I can say.
Cool. Right. I guess this does come back to, building your relationship with your user base, maybe enterprise customers, potential customers. It's a conversation that needs to happen to figure out how to monetize this, whole thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in today's market, kind of what are people willing to pay for? What is the pricing point? What's the customer journey? It's a whole, once you get into an organization that's funded by VC, it's a whole spectrum of things that we will have a part 2 conversation on. But for now, we're going one step at a time.
Awesome. I think this is a perfect note to end this conversation on. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any, quick last word, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say, thank you for those who have supported us during this time. We're very appreciative of the open source community. And, check us out on Discord, on Twitter. We're at Charm CLI. I'm at JZ Musings. If you want to DM us, tweet at us. We're very friendly people. We're quite responsive, I like to think. And let us know your feedback. Thank you, YK.
Thanks for being here again.